The city was alive with colors and sounds he had never known before. Neon lights flashed from strange signs, glowing in languages he could not read. The air was thick with smoke from food stalls where creatures with too many eyes roasted meat that smelled both sweet and sour. The human Daniel walked slowly through the alien marketplace. His heart beat fast. He had dreamed of visiting other worlds, but now that he was here, it felt less like a dream and more like a trap. Everyone was staring at him. Some aliens whispered. Some laughed. Some only watched in silence, their faces unreadable. Daniel kept his head low. He told himself, "Don't look at anyone. Don't get noticed. Just find a way out." But curiosity burned inside him. Every corner was filled with new wonders. He saw crystal birds flying in circles, vendors selling weapons that hummed with energy, and cages of glowing animals that pulsed with light. He had never felt so small, so human, in a world not made for him. He pulled his jacket tighter around himself and tried to disappear into the crowd. But then it happened. One glance. Daniel's eyes, almost by accident, lifted across the marketplace. And that was the moment everything changed. She was standing on a raised platform, surrounded by guards in armor that shimmered like metal and fire. Tall, fierce, and terrifyingly beautiful, the alien princess looked straight at him. Her skin glowed faintly as if stars lived beneath it. Her eyes were sharp and golden, and when they locked with his, Daniel felt his body freeze. The crowd gasped. He heard it ripple through the air like a wave. He looked at her. Daniel's stomach dropped. He didn't know the rules, but he could feel it. Something sacred had just been broken. The guard shifted, their weapons humming. The princess tilted her head, and for a single heartbeat her lips curved into a smile. It was not a kind smile. It was a dangerous one. Daniel tore his gaze away and forced his legs to move. His brain screamed, "Don't run! Don't panic." But his body didn't listen. He pushed through the crowd, bumping into creatures taller and stronger than him. Some shouted curses. Others stepped back quickly as if afraid to be near him. Everywhere he turned, he saw armored guards closing in. The marketplace no longer felt like a place to explore. It was a cage. The music, the shouting, the hissing of alien voices, all of it crashed down on him like thunder. He ran down a narrow alley, his breath sharp and heavy. But the alley was already blocked. Two guards stood there, tall as statues, their faces hidden by helmets. One raised a weapon shaped like a blaster rifle, but wider, heavier, like a shotgun forged from glowing steel. The barrel glowed with red fire. Daniel stumbled back, his hands raised. "Wait, I didn't mean—" He tried to explain, but his voice was swallowed by the sound of the crowd now pressing in behind him. The guard said nothing. They stepped aside, and from between them came the princess herself. She moved slowly, with the grace of a predator. Her long cloak shimmered like liquid light as it dragged across the ground. The marketplace fell into silence. Every alien watched, waiting for what would happen next. Daniel's chest rose and fell. He wanted to shout, to fight, to explain, but his throat was dry. The princess stopped in front of him. For a moment, neither spoke. Her golden eyes studied him like he was a puzzle, or perhaps prey. Then she leaned closer, her voice low but clear, carrying across the silent marketplace. "He's mine." The words struck Daniel harder than any weapon. The guards lowered their shotguns but did not step away. The crowd erupted into cheers and shouts, voices mixing in strange languages he could not understand. But he understood one thing very well. His life was no longer his own. Daniel shook his head, backing away. "No, this is a mistake. I didn't do anything. I didn't mean to—" The princess raised her hand. The guards froze instantly, like statues waiting for her command. She looked at Daniel with that same dangerous smile. One glance. One blaster, one fate. "You belong to me now." Daniel's heart pounded. He wanted to argue, to tell her he was just a traveler, a stranger who knew nothing of her customs. But the blasters aimed at his chest told him the truth. No one cared what he wanted. The crowd pressed closer, chanting in unison, their voices rising like a storm. "Human! Human!" They laughed, shouted, and some even bowed as if the moment had already been sealed. Daniel's mind raced. He thought of escape, of running, of finding a ship and fleeing this cursed planet. But the princess's golden eyes held him in place. And deep inside, a cold truth whispered to him there was no way out, not now, not after one glance. And when she reached out her hand, the guard stepped forward, ready to drag him into a destiny he had never chosen. The last thing Daniel saw before darkness filled his vision was the princess's smile. Not cruel, not kind, something far more dangerous. Daniel woke to the sound of metal boots striking the ground. His head throbbed. He tried to move, but his wrists were bound by glowing cuffs that pulsed like fire every time he pulled. The princess's guards surrounded him, their weapons pointed close enough that he could smell the heat coming off the barrels. The princess herself stood only a few steps away, calm and smiling as if she had already won. "You don't understand," Daniel said quickly. His voice shook, but he forced the words out. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to look at you." The guards laughed, a harsh mechanical sound that echoed in the narrow street. The princess tilted her head, golden eyes never leaving him. "You don't understand," she said softly. "In my world there are no accidents. You saw me. You dared, and now tradition binds you to me." Daniel's chest tightened. "Tradition? I don't even know your people's rules." "Then you will learn," she replied. The crowd around them roared in approval. Some shouted words Daniel couldn't understand. Others stamped their feet until the ground trembled. He felt trapped inside a living storm, and the storm wanted him to bow. Suddenly, one of the guards lifted his shotgun-shaped blaster and aimed it at Daniel's head. The weapon hummed with red energy, ready to fire. The guard's voice was cold and final. "If he refuses, he dies here." Daniel's breath caught. The barrel was so close he could see his own terrified reflection in its glow. The crowd fell silent. Even the princess waited, watching. This was no game. One wrong word and he would be gone. Daniel's mind raced. If he said yes, he would be trapped in a life he didn't want. If he said no, he would die before he could take another step. He thought of Earth, of the stars he had crossed to get here. Was this how it ended? He began, voice trembling. But before he could finish, instinct took over. He ducked. The guard's finger twitched on the trigger. A blast of red fire shot past Daniel's ear, burning the wall behind him into molten stone. The crowd screamed. Daniel threw himself forward, slamming his shoulder into the guard's stomach. The alien stumbled, and Daniel yanked hard against the glowing cuffs. Pain shot up his arms, but the force was enough. The cuffs sparked and loosened. For the first time, Daniel's hands were free. The princess laughed. It was not the laugh of someone angry. It was the laugh of someone entertained. "Run, human," she said, her voice carrying over the chaos. "Run, and let's see if you live." Daniel didn't wait for another word. He shoved past the stunned guards and sprinted into the marketplace. The crowd scattered, some screaming, some cheering, as if they had just witnessed the beginning of a sport. Blaster fire lit up the streets behind him. Bolts of red energy tore through market stalls, sending fruit, metal, and alien creatures flying into the air. Daniel zigzagged through the chaos, his heart pounding louder than the shots. He dove over a cart, rolled to his feet, and kept running. Everywhere he turned, he saw armored figures closing in. The city wasn't a place anymore. It was a maze, a cage with no exit. Daniel darted into a narrow passage, breath sharp, lungs burning. He thought he was safe until he slammed straight into another guard. The alien raised his weapon, but Daniel acted faster. He grabbed a handful of dirt from the ground and threw it into the guard's eyes. The alien howled, blinded, and fired wildly into the air. Daniel wrenched the blaster from his hands and ran again. The weapon was heavy, too heavy for him, but it hummed with deadly promise. He clutched it tight. He knew he couldn't outfight them, but maybe he could outthink them. The alley spilled into a wide plaza. Neon signs flickered overhead, and hovering vehicles zoomed past on glowing rails. Daniel spotted a sleek hoverbike parked nearby. He didn't hesitate. Sprinting forward, he jumped onto the seat, pressing random buttons until the machine roared to life. The hoverbike shot forward with a scream of engines. Wind tore at his face as he swerved between traffic, the city lights becoming a blur. Behind him, more hoverbikes lifted into the air. The princess's guards were in pursuit. Blaster fire cracked through the night sky. Daniel leaned hard to the side, dodging one shot, then another. One bolt grazed his leg, burning through his pants. He cried out but forced himself to stay steady. The chase ripped across the city, through towering skyscrapers and narrow sky bridges. Aliens below pointed and shouted, watching the human fight for his life. For a moment, Daniel thought he might escape. The guards were still behind him, but the distance was growing. He leaned forward, urging the hoverbike faster, faster, until the lights of the docking bay came into view. His heart leapt. If he could just get to a ship, any ship, he could be free. But as he slowed at the entrance of the bay, his hope died. She was already there. The princess stood at the center of the platform, calm as ever, her cloak rippling in the night air. No guards, no blasters, just her. She had known exactly where he would run. Daniel skidded the hover bike to a stop, breathing hard, blaster still clutched in his hand. "Stay back," he warned, his voice rough. "I'm not your prisoner." The princess stepped closer, her golden eyes shining. She did not look afraid. She did not even look angry. Instead, she smiled, slow and deliberate. "You fight well," she said softly. "You run like prey, but you think like a hunter." "I was right about you." Daniel aimed the stolen blaster at her chest, hands shaking. "I'm warning you." She ignored the weapon. With a graceful motion, she reached into her cloak and pulled out a thin, glowing collar. It pulsed with the same light as the cuffs had earlier. "Now," she whispered, stepping close enough for him to feel the heat of her skin, "you cannot leave." And before he could react, she snapped the collar around his neck. The world went white with light. Light burned in Daniel's vision as the collar snapped shut. It wasn't pain, not exactly, but a sharp surge of energy that spread through every nerve. His knees buckled. He gasped, clawing at the glowing band around his neck. It pulsed with a cold rhythm like a second heartbeat, reminding him with every flash that he was not free. The princess stood over him, calm and unshaken. "You belong to me now," she said softly. "This collar will keep you safe. Or keep you trapped." Daniel's breath came fast. "I don't belong to anyone." He staggered to his feet, fists tight. The blaster he had stolen lay at his side, useless now. He could feel it, the collar had drained his strength. If he tried to fire, the energy would only rebound on him. He was trapped again, but this time the cage was invisible. The princess reached out as if to touch his face, but Daniel slapped her hand away. The crowd around the docking bay gasped. Her guards were already moving in, but the princess raised a hand to stop them. Her golden eyes glittered not with anger but with amusement. "You have spirit," she whispered. "Good, I don't want a slave. I want a fighter." Daniel's jaw clenched. He didn't know if she was mocking him or praising him, but either way he refused to stay. His mind spun with plans. He couldn't fight her guards, not directly. He couldn't blast his way out. But maybe, just maybe, he could trick them. Humans weren't the strongest or the fastest. But humans were clever, and cleverness was his only weapon. He let his shoulders slump, pretending to give up. "Fine," he said, forcing the words through clenched teeth. "Take me, do what you want." The princess tilted her head. "So easily?" Daniel gave a weak laugh. "What choice do I have?" The guards stepped closer, their weapons lowering as they prepared to escort him back into the city. Daniel walked slowly, carefully, his head lowered like a prisoner, but inside every muscle in his body was coiled tight. He counted their steps, their distance, the timing of their movements. When the moment came, he struck. Daniel threw himself sideways, grabbing one guard's weapon with both hands and twisting it toward the ground. The weapon fired, blasting a hole in the platform. The guards shouted, trying to restrain him, but Daniel was already moving. He smashed his elbow into one alien's helmet, ducked under another's arm, and sprinted for the hover bike. The collar burned, sending shocks down his spine, but he gritted his teeth and pushed through the pain. He leapt onto the hover bike, slammed his hand on the controls, and the machine screamed to life. The princess's voice echoed behind him. "Run, human, run!" He didn't look back. The hoverbike shot forward, engines roaring as Daniel steered it into the dark sky. The city stretched before him, a jungle of neon towers and flying ships. His only hope was to lose them in the chaos. But the guards were fast. More hoverbikes lifted from the platform, chasing after him. Red bolts of blaster fire streaked past his head. Daniel swerved hard, diving between skyscrapers and weaving through glowing bridges. Signs exploded in showers of sparks as shots missed their mark. He ducked into a narrow service tunnel, engines screaming. The walls closed in around him, but he kept pushing forward. Sparks flew as the hoverbike scraped against metal pipes. Behind him, the guards followed like hungry wolves. Daniel's eyes darted around. He needed a plan. He spotted a fuel line running along the wall, glowing faint blue. Without thinking, he yanked the hoverbike sideways, smashing the blaster he still carried into the pipe. It burst open, spraying gas into the tunnel. Then he fired. The blast ignited the fuel, and a wall of fire roared between him and the guards. Daniel ducked low, speeding ahead as the explosion shook the tunnel. The guards shouted, their bikes spinning out of control. For the first time, Daniel had a lead, He burst out of the tunnel into open air. The night sky spread wide above him, filled with ships and lights. His heart pounded. He could almost taste freedom, but then the collar pulsed again, harder this time. His vision blurred. His muscles locked for a moment, and the bike swerved dangerously close to a building. He barely pulled it back in time. The collar wasn't just a leash. It was a chain that could pull him down at any moment. Daniel cursed under his breath. He couldn't keep running like this. The collar would kill him before the guards did. He needed it gone. Up ahead, he spotted a shadowy structure clinging to the edge of the city, an old maintenance station, abandoned and broken. He turned sharply, steering the hoverbike toward it. The guards were still behind him, but the distance was growing again. If he could reach the station, maybe he could find tools to break the collar. He landed hard on the platform, the hoverbike skidding to a stop. Daniel leapt off, gasping for air. The station was silent, dark except for the flicker of dying lights. Rusted machines loomed in the shadows. It was the kind of place no one visited anymore, perfect for someone desperate enough to hide. Daniel's hands clawed at the collar. There has to be a way, he muttered. He scanned the room, searching for cutters, plasma saws, anything sharp enough to break the device. But before he could find anything, a voice cut through the silence. "You cannot hide from me." Daniel spun around. The princess stood in the doorway, her cloak billowing in the night wind. She had come alone. No guards, no weapons. Just her golden eyes glowing brighter than ever. "How?" Daniel began, but his words caught. He realized the truth. The collar wasn't just a chain. It was a beacon. Wherever he ran, it would lead her to him. The princess stepped closer, her smile calm, almost gentle. "You fight well, human. But the game is over." Daniel's back pressed against the cold wall. His eyes darted, searching for escape, but there was none. Not this time. Not here. And as she raised her hand, the collar around his neck began to burn brighter, preparing to decide his fate. Daniel was dragged through massive bronze doors that groaned as they opened. The moment he stepped inside, the air grew heavy. The hall was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows. Strange banners of fire and silk hung from the walls, marked with symbols he didn't understand. The floor was polished black stone, so reflective he could see his own terrified face staring back at him. Alien guards marched at his side, their weapons pointed at his ribs. The collar around his neck pulsed, a constant reminder that he was bound. At the far end of the hall, seated upon towering thrones of stone and crystal, sat the alien council. There were 7 of them. Each one looked different. One with horns spiraling upward, another with skin like molten rock, another with eyes that burned blue like lightning. They looked down at him as though he were an insect. Daniel swallowed hard. His legs wanted to give out, but he forced himself to stay upright. He would not bow. Not yet. The princess walked ahead of him, her cloak trailing behind like a river of starlight. She stopped at the center of the hall, turned to face the council, and raised her chin. "I bring before you the human," she declared. Her voice was strong, echoing across the chamber. "He looked upon me. He defied my guards, and he survived. He is mine." The council stirred, their voices rumbling like distant thunder. One of them leaned forward, his horned face grim. "A human?" he said with disgust. "Weak, fragile, a creature of dirt and water. You would claim him as your mate?" The princess's golden eyes narrowed. He dared to meet my gaze. No other has done so without breaking. He ran, he fought. He still stands. That makes him worthy. The hall filled with murmurs, sharp whispers that bounced off the stone. Some of the council members nodded, others scowled. Daniel's heart raced. "Mate?" The word stuck in his head like a blade. He stepped forward, voice shaking but loud. "I don't belong to anyone. I'm not your prize. I'm not your tradition. I just want to go home." The hall went silent. Dozens of alien eyes turned to him. The courage in his voice surprised even himself, but the moment the words left his mouth, he knew they were dangerous. A council member with molten skin slammed his clawed hand on the arm of his throne. "Insolence!" he roared. "He insults our law. End him now." Guards raised their weapons. Daniel froze, the collar burning hot around his neck. But before a single shot was fired, the princess lifted her hand. "No," she said firmly. "He is under my protection. He is mine. If he dies, then I declare war on every clan that challenges me." The threat hung in the air like a blade. The council shifted uncomfortably. War was not a word spoken lightly. Another counselor, with eyes like lightning, leaned forward. You would risk war over this human? The princess's voice was calm. Yes. Daniel's breath caught. He didn't know what shocked him more, the fact that she was protecting him or the fact that she was willing to start a war to keep him. The horned counselor sneered. Then let us see if he is worthy. Let him prove his strength here and now. The others murmured in agreement. The molten-skinned one grinned, sharp teeth glinting. Yes, trial by combat. If he survives, he lives. If he fails, he dies. Daniel's stomach turned cold. Combat. They wanted him to fight against who, against what he didn't know. But one thing was certain, they wanted blood. The princess's gaze flickered to him. For the first time, he saw something different in her golden eyes. Not cruelty, not amusement, but something closer to concern. She gave the faintest nod as if to say, "You can do this." But Daniel wasn't so sure. Two guards stepped forward, dragging him toward the center of the hall. The black stone floor gleamed under the light as the crowd of alien nobles rose from their seats, eager for the show. A circle of fire erupted around him, sealing him inside. On the far side, another figure entered the ring. Tall, broad, armored in steel that glowed with heat. In his hands were twin plasma blades that hummed with deadly energy. His face was familiar from whispers in the market. The rival prince. The one who wanted the princess for himself. The crowd roared with approval. The rival prince pointed one blade at Daniel and sneered. This human is nothing. When I kill him, I will take the princess and the council will thank me. Daniel's blood ran cold. He had no armor, no weapon. Only his bare hands and his desperate will to live. The princess shouted from behind the fire. Give him a weapon! The council laughed. One of them tossed a crude spear into the ring. It clattered at Daniel's feet, little more than a stick of metal sharpened at one end. Compared to the prince's blazing swords, it was nothing. Daniel bent down and picked it up. His hands trembled, but he gripped it tight. The fire crackled around him, the crowd chanting louder and louder. His throat was dry, his heart pounding, but there was no escape. Not now. The rival prince raised his blades. Sparks danced across the air. The circle of fire flared higher. Daniel stood alone, weapon in hand, staring into the eyes of the alien who wanted him dead, and then the prince charged. The circle of fire roared higher, its heat pressing against Daniel's skin. The crowd thundered with chants, alien voices echoing from the vaulted ceiling. The rival prince stepped forward, plasma blades glowing in both hands. His armor shimmered with heat, every movement precise, confident, deadly. He had killed before. Daniel could see it in his eyes. Daniel gripped the crude spear tighter. It was heavy and awkward, the metal shaft cold in his trembling hands. He had no training, no armor, nothing but fear and desperation. His throat was dry. His knees shook, but running wasn't an option. The wall of fire around him left only one path, fight or die. The prince smiled, sharp teeth glinting. Human, he hissed, his voice carrying easily over the crowd. You don't belong here. You are prey, and I am the predator. With a roar, the prince charged. His plasma blades cut the air, leaving trails of burning light. Daniel threw himself sideways at the last second. The ground where he had stood exploded in sparks as the plasma slashed stone. The crowd screamed with excitement. Daniel scrambled back, spear held up like a shield. The prince came again, faster, striking high, then low, forcing Daniel to block with the shaft of his weapon. Each impact rattled his bones, sparks flying where blade met metal. Daniel stumbled, nearly dropping the spear. You see? The prince shouted to the council. This is no warrior. This is a weak creature from a dying world. The crowd laughed, jeering. But Daniel heard something else beneath their voices. The princess. She wasn't laughing. She was watching, her golden eyes burning with something fierce. Not amusement, not pity. Something closer to faith. Daniel's breath came fast. He couldn't overpower the prince. He couldn't match his strength or skill. But he didn't have to. He had to survive. And survival meant using what he had, speed, wit, and desperation. The prince lunged again. Daniel didn't block this time. He dropped low, rolled beneath the swinging blade, and jabbed the spear at the prince's leg. The crude point glanced off the armor, but the force made the prince stumble. The crowd gasped. Daniel leapt back to his feet, adrenaline flooding him. For the first time, the prince's grin faltered. You fight like a rat, the prince spat, circling him. Daniel forced a weak smile. Better a rat than a corpse. The insult made the crowd roar with laughter. The prince's face twisted with rage. He came at Daniel harder, blades slashing in a storm of fire and sparks. Daniel barely kept up, ducking, sidestepping, parrying with the shaft of the spear. Each move was clumsy, desperate, but it kept him alive. Then came his chance. The prince swung wide, aiming to slice Daniel in half. Daniel dropped flat to the ground. The plasma blade whooshed over his head, close enough to singe his hair. As the prince stumbled from the missed swing, Daniel thrust upward with the spear. The point slid between two plates of armor and into flesh. The prince roared in pain, staggering back. Blue blood splattered across the stone floor, hissing where it touched fire. The arena exploded with noise. Some shouted in shock, others in delight. The council leaned forward, their expressions no longer bored but tense. Daniel pulled back, panting, gripping the bloody spear. His hands shook, his body screamed with exhaustion, but he was still standing. The prince's eyes blazed with fury. He yanked the spear from his wound and threw it aside, snapping it in half. His plasma blades hummed louder, burning brighter. "Now you die," he roared. Daniel's heart dropped. His only weapon was gone. The broken spear lay useless on the ground. The prince advanced, blades spinning, each step measured and deadly. Daniel's eyes darted wildly, searching. He spotted the molten crack in the floor where the first plasma strike had landed. Heat still shimmered from it. An idea sparked in his mind. The prince lunged. Daniel darted back, letting the blades chase him toward the crack. At the last second, he dove aside. The prince's foot landed on the weakened stone and it gave way. The floor crumbled beneath him. For a moment, the prince staggered, one foot trapped in the molten crack. His balance broke. Daniel didn't hesitate. He grabbed a shard of the broken spear and rammed it into the exposed joint of the prince's armor. The alien screamed as the shard sank deep. The crowd erupted, half in rage, half in wild cheers. The prince collapsed to one knee, plasma blades dropping from his hands. Daniel kicked one away, snatching the other before it hit the ground. He raised it high, his chest heaving, the weapon humming with power. The fire around the ring flared brighter. The council leaned forward. The princess's lips parted, her golden eyes locked on him. The whole hall waited for the human to deliver the final strike. Daniel's arm trembled. The blade hovered inches from the prince's throat. One strike and it would be over. The crowd demanded blood. The council wanted proof, but Daniel hesitated. He wasn't a killer. He didn't want this. But if he showed mercy, would they see it as weakness? Would they finish what the prince started? The prince's eyes glared up at him, burning with hate. His voice was a rasp. "Do it, human, or I swear I will rise again and end you." Daniel's breath shook. His arm wavered. And then, he roared and drove the blade down. The arena fell silent. The crowd stared, frozen. The prince's body slumped against the black stone, lifeless. The fire around the circle hissed and shrank. Then the silence broke. The hall erupted in wild chants, thousands of voices thundering one word over and over. "Human! Human! Human!" Daniel stood in the center of the ring, plasma blade dripping with blue fire, chest heaving. He didn't feel like a victor. He felt like a survivor. The princess smiled, and in that moment Daniel realized something terrifying. He wasn't free. He was deeper in their game than ever before. The chants of "human, human" still echoed in Daniel's ears long after the fire ring collapsed. His chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. The plasma blade slipped from his hand, clattering onto the black stone floor. He could still feel its heat burning his skin. The rival prince's body lay motionless, blue blood pooling around him. The council sat in stunned silence. Some leaned forward in shock, others in disgust, but none spoke. For the first time, Daniel realized the entire chamber was waiting, not for the council, not for the nobles, but for the princess. She stepped gracefully into the arena, her golden eyes glowing like twin suns. The guards moved aside without question. The crowd parted, bowing as if she were not just royalty, but destiny itself. She stopped in front of Daniel, her cloak brushing against the scorched stone. "You see," she said softly, her voice carrying like thunder in the silence.
"He is not weak.
He is not prey. He is mine." The council erupted in protest. The horned elder slammed his hand against his throne. "This is madness. A human cannot sit among our bloodlines. He cannot wear the crown of warriors." The molten-skinned elder snarled. "It is blasphemy. He is dirt made flesh. He should have died on the first strike." But the princess raised her hand and even the council fell silent. You saw it. He faced your champion. He bled, but he survived. None of you can deny it. Daniel's head spun. His arms trembled. He wanted to scream that this wasn't his victory, that it wasn't his world. But his voice caught in his throat. His body was still shaking from the fight. The princess stepped closer, so close he could feel the heat of her skin. She lowered her voice, speaking only to him. I chose you, human. Not because of a glance. Not because of tradition. I needed someone who would break every rule and still stand. Daniel's eyes widened. You planned this? Her smile was faint, dangerous. From the beginning, the word struck him harder than any blade. All of it, the stare, the guards, the chase, the collar, it hadn't been an accident. She had orchestrated it all. Why? He asked, voice rough. Her golden eyes flickered. Because I do not want a suitor who bows. I do not want a mate chosen by council or bloodline. I wanted one who defied me, one who fought me, one who fought for himself. Only then could I be sure. Daniel's stomach twisted. He thought of the market, of the hunters, of the duel. All of it had been a game, a test. His fear, his pain, his desperate will to live, she had wanted it. She had needed it. You used me, he whispered. Yes, she admitted without shame. And now you have proven yourself. You are mine and I am yours. Together we will shatter every rival who dares to challenge us. Before Daniel could answer, a voice cut through the hall like a blade. Not yet. The council turned. The molten-skinned elder stood, his eyes glowing like fire. Behind him, the great doors of the chamber burst open. Dozens of armored warriors stormed in, bearing banners marked with the rival prince's crest. Their weapons blazed as they marched forward, filling the hall with the sound of war. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The council shouted in panic. The rival prince might have fallen, but his followers had not. His death had ignited them. Now they were here to claim vengeance. Daniel staggered back. His body was spent, his arms heavy as stone. He had nothing left to give. I can't fight them all, he muttered. The princess turned to him, her golden eyes sharp with fire. You will not be alone. They want blood. Then we will give them a war. The rival prince's army spread across the chamber, their leader shouting, The human dies tonight, and the false princess with him. The council screamed for guards, but chaos swallowed the chamber. Blades clashed, blasters fired, fire cracked against stone. The air filled with smoke and blood. Daniel ducked as a bolt of plasma shot past his head. He grabbed a fallen guard's shield, raising it just in time to block another strike. The force sent him sprawling, but he staggered back to his feet. His body screamed in pain, but adrenaline drove him forward. The princess fought beside him. Her movements were fluid, her strikes lethal. Her cloak shimmered with every step, her golden eyes burning with fury. Together they pushed back the first wave, but more soldiers poured in. Daniel's mind raced. He couldn't outfight them, not forever. But maybe he could outsmart them. He looked at the banners of the rival prince, their fabric glowing faintly. He realized they weren't just symbols. They were signal transmitters guiding the army's movements. He shouted to the princess, The banners! Destroy them! She turned, saw what he saw, and nodded. With a roar, she leapt into the fray, cutting down soldiers and tearing the banners from their poles. Daniel followed, smashing the transmitters against the floor. Sparks flew. The army faltered, their formation breaking. The chamber shook with explosions. Smoke filled the air. But slowly the tide turned. The rival prince's soldiers, confused and leaderless, began to fall back. The princess drove her blade into the ground, raising her voice over the chaos. This is our world. And this human is mine. The hall thundered with cheers from her loyalists. The rival prince's army fled into the shadows, leaving behind bodies and broken weapons. Daniel fell to his knees, gasping, his body drenched in sweat. The collar burned against his skin, but he barely felt it. His mind was reeling with what he had learned. The princess stood over him, victorious, her golden eyes burning. She extended her hand to him once more. Do you see now, human? You were never prey. You were always meant to fight beside me. This is our destiny. Daniel looked at her hand, then at the ruined hall around them. He wanted to run. He wanted to go home. But deep inside, he knew there was no going back. And as the council whispered in fear and awe, Daniel realized the truth. He wasn't just trapped in her game anymore. He was at the center of a war that could change an entire world. Smoke hung heavy in the ruined chamber. stinging Daniel's eyes. Broken banners and shattered weapons littered the floor, and the bodies of soldiers, both loyalists and rebels, lay where they had fallen. The air smelled of fire, blood, and ozone. The great council hall, once a place of order, now felt like the heart of a battlefield. Daniel leaned against a cracked pillar, chest heaving, his body trembling from exhaustion. His arms ached, his hands raw. Every breath was a struggle, but somehow he was still alive. Around him, the council whispered in fear and awe, their voices hushed as if they were watching history shift before their eyes. The princess stood tall at the center of the chaos, her golden eyes blazing. Her cloak was torn and stained with ash, but her presence had not dimmed. If anything, she looked more dangerous than ever, victorious, unbroken, unstoppable. She turned to him, her gaze sharp, her smile edged with fire. "You see, human," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "Together we are stronger than any rival. You are no longer prey. You are my equal, my chosen." Daniel swallowed hard. Equal. Chosen. Words that should have sounded like victory, but instead weighed on him like chains. He thought of Earth, of the blue skies and quiet forests he might never see again. He thought of freedom, the one thing he had always chased, and the one thing slipping further from his reach. The council rose slowly, their voices mixing in panic and anger. One elder shouted, "This cannot be allowed. A human cannot lead." Another snarled, "He is a stranger. He brings war." The princess raised her hand, silencing them. "He is mine," she declared, her voice firm as stone. "By blood spilled and by fire endured, he has earned his place. Any who challenge him will face me and fall as the prince did." The hall erupted with shouts, some in agreement, others in rage. Daniel felt the weight of their eyes pressing on him, heavier than the collar still burning around his neck. And then came the sound that froze his blood. A soft hum. A familiar hum. The collar pulsed brighter than before. Daniel grabbed at it, his heart pounding. He realized what was happening. It wasn't just a chain. It was a control. And someone else had activated it. He fell to his knees, gasping as energy coursed through his body. Pain lit up his veins like fire. His vision blurred. He could barely hear the crowd's cries over the roar in his head. The princess dropped beside him, fury flashing in her eyes. "Who dares?" she shouted. The molten-skinned elder stood, his claws raised high. "The human is not yours to command. He is a weapon, and weapons belong to the council." Daniel's body convulsed. His hands clawed at the collar, desperate to tear it free, but the light only burned brighter. His strength was fading. The princess's voice cut through his haze. "Fight it, Daniel. You are stronger than their chains. You are stronger than their lies." Her hand grasped his shoulder, firm, steady, unyielding. Her golden eyes locked with his, pulling him back from the edge, and something inside him snapped. With a roar, Daniel surged to his feet. His hands gripped the collar. Pain exploded through him, but he pulled harder, harder until the metal cracked. Sparks flew. The collar shattered, falling in glowing pieces to the floor. The hall went silent. The elders stared in shock. The crowd gasped. The princess smiled. Daniel stood tall, chest heaving, smoke rising from his skin. The weight around his neck was gone. For the first time since he had met her, he was free. Truly free. He looked at the princess. She watched him closely, her expression unreadable. She did not order him. She did not beg him. She only asked, her voice quiet, dangerous, and full of fire. "Now that you are free, will you stay?" Daniel froze. The question hit him harder than any blade. Stay and rule beside her at the heart of an alien world. Feared and respected, bound to her forever. Or leave. Find a ship, find a way home, vanish into the stars, and forget her golden eyes that had changed everything. The hall waited, every alien holding their breath. The council glared. The crowd leaned forward, the princess's hand lingered outstretched. Daniel's chest rose and fell. He stared at her hand, at the woman who had trapped him, tested him, and maybe, just maybe, saved him. He thought of Earth, he thought of her. Slowly he reached out. His fingers brushed hers. The hall erupted with a roar of voices, shaking the walls, shaking the world. But deep inside, Daniel knew the truth. His choice had bound him to a destiny he never wanted, and yet one he could no longer walk away from. One glance had started it. One blaster had sealed it, and now there was no going back.